So at the NBA trade deadline in March, in which the Bulls made substantial moves in trading for Nikola Vucevic, Daniel Theis, Troy Brown Jr., and Javonte Green, really Vucevic being the biggest one of them all because he was an all-star and the Bulls were in desperate need of a big man at the time that could actually score, shoot from outside, and crash the board, something the Bulls weren't really getting in the young Wendell Carter Jr. Now, once the trade deadline had passed and some time had settled for us to grade the moves by the Bulls, I thought to myself, what would GarPax have done if they were still in charge and running things at the trade deadline? Because we all know they would not have taken the aggressive approach in which Acme did at the deadline. And it was a pretty funny video. I'll leave it linked in the description in case you missed it. If you were new to the channel, or maybe you already saw it but don't remember. But in any event, I thought, why not do a similar hypothetical scenario of how this offseason would have transpired had GarPax still been sitting in the front office, just to troll them even a little bit further, and we'll have some fun with it. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So we all know the moves that the Bulls made this offseason by now, with the exception of Lauri Markkanen, of course. That still remains to be seen. So I'm not going to reiterate all of the offseason moves here, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to treat this offseason like a blank slate. Well, not really a blank slate, but more so meaning the Bulls season ended as it did, and the roster that we saw before free agency in the draft was currently the roster. And yes, even though we all know GarPax wouldn't have made the trade for Vucevic at the deadline, let's just assume that they did for this video. So obviously one of the biggest needs on this Bulls roster that we all knew the front office was going to address, and that was upgrading at the point guard position, which the Bulls did in bringing in Lonzo Ball via sign and trade. Now, of course, GarPax never operated with an aggressive mindset and striking quick when free agency opened, going after the big names. No, they would wait patiently, assess the landscape, and let other teams snatch up all the free agents while the Bulls were left going after the scraps and overpaying for said scraps. So in this instance, when free agency rolled out, the Bulls would not have pursued a sign and trade or an offer for Lonzo Ball or even a sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan. No, the very first thing they would have done is extended an offer to Lauri Markkanen to the tune of 4 years, $80 million. Basically what Arturas gave Lonzo, because giving up on Markkanen would be admitting defeat. Selecting him as their prize piece in that Jimmy Butler trade with the number 7 pick, that would be admitting that it was a mistake. And of course they can't do that. These guys had massive egos and would never let their pride get to them, so they would chalk it up to Markkanen is young, he's up and coming, he's a stretch four who can shoot, which they aren't necessarily wrong, but Markkanen is nowhere near worth that kind of money. But because they are afraid to lose him or be forced to match an offer sheet from another team, in the fear that some team might pay him actually more and we wouldn't want to match. Because why wouldn't they, right? It's Markkanen, the player they drafted, everyone wants him. But we're not going to let anybody take him from us, so we're just going to agree to a big contract extension up front that Lauri cannot refuse. So Markkanen takes up a good portion of the Bulls salary cap by extending him that $80 million deal. Now, the other things that this front office would have done in this offseason is waive both Thaddeus Young and Tomas Satoransky and not fully guaranteeing their deals because they could get cold feet. They feel they won't be able to trade these players if they fully guarantee their contracts, which of course would be the smart thing to do in order to get their contracts fully off the books and actually get something for them in return in the event of a trade. So GarPax decide, you know what? We need to create more cap space to sign other big name free agents that we know all want to come play for Chicago, especially if we're running things. So let's cut our losses and waive them, keeping $11 million of dead money on the books for guys who will not be playing for the team. But hey, we also created $13 million in cap space. You got to remember that. Then they would think, well, we were able to keep our guy Lauri Markkanen. We've got some extra cap space. Who should we go after? Well, we still need a point guard. Guys like Lonzo, Kyle Lowry, Spencer Dinwiddie, they're good options, but oh wait, they've already signed with other teams because that's what big name free agents do. They sign right when free agency opens, generally speaking. So they would say, well, let's hold off on that front and let's focus on building out some depth off the bench because, oh, by the way, we already lost Daniel Theis because if Acme isn't going to give Theis a better offer than the Rockets, you know damn well GarPax are not going to pay more than that. So they look around at the landscape, they see some guys that are available, but they don't really pique their interest all that much. But then they come across a guy in Nerlens Noel, a center who had a decent season with the Knicks, a great defender and rim protector. He's a good resolution for losing Daniel Theis. But let's give Noel an offer that he can't refuse. Let's pay him 3 years, $35 million. Yes, Nerlens Noel, $35 million. That sounds about right. Yeah, that's his fair market value. Okay, so now we've got Nerlens Noel behind Vucevic, and we've got Markkanen in the front court, and you know what? He's actually going to start, since we lost Thaddeus Young, so Markkanen is actually going to start at power forward. We've got Patrick Williams at the 3, and of course Zach Lavine, and although GarPax, they do feel that Coby White is a strong player and could be their point guard for the future because you know they drafted him, and we all know GarPax only draft the best, and they think, you know what? Why don't we see what the latest is with Devontae Graham? But when they inquire, they realize that Graham wants way too much money, so they pass on Graham. He signs with another team, but it's okay. We hold off on that for now, and we figure that out later. In the meantime, GarPax are realizing they're kind of running out of options with the free agency landscape drying up. They take a look at their own free agents and say, you know what? Let's extend Valentine because we really just love his confidence, even though he's a terrible player, but we always need confidence on this team, right? And heck, we used a lottery pick on this guy in 2016. Let's not just extend him for one more year like last time. Let's actually lock him into a 2-year deal at $12 million. We'll even give him a player option on the second year because who knows, he might just break out and want to opt out for more money. They look around more. We still have Felicio. Could he be a good piece to give us some more depth? We'll come back to him. Let's keep looking. Oh, Ryan Arcidiacono, we love this kid. We love his hustle. You know what? We still need some depth at the point guard position. Let's pick up his team option for $3 million. Let's keep looking. We got Javonte Green. Nah, not worth it. No need to extend him a qualifying offer. That money could be better spent elsewhere. Then GarPax realized they could use a shooter. Well, wouldn't you know it, Doug McDermott is available, and they're going to say, you know what, we knew we were right about him all along when we had drafted him and traded 2 first-round picks to move up in the draft to select him, before Zach Lavine, mind you. We're going to go bring him back, and we're going to give him a deal the Spurs gave him. But actually, we're going to throw a couple $1 million more on top of it so he chooses us over San Antonio. Now, breaking character for a moment, I actually did want the Bulls to sign McDermott to a very cheap deal this offseason before free agency began because I thought the Bulls could really use his sharpshooting and figured we could get him on a cheap deal. But then after seeing what the Spurs gave him, absolutely no thanks to McDermott. There's no way he is near worth that kind of money, and I'm glad the Bulls didn't even entertain that. I was quite frankly pretty shocked at how much the Spurs actually offered him. But anyway, back to being GarPax. So we've got our guy McDermott, who we initially drafted and then traded away for Cameron Payne. And now we brought him back because we knew we were right about this guy all along. And then finally, we take a look around the league and assess the free agency landscape, looking for that point guard that we were hoping for, and we see none other than Dennis Schroeder. He is still available. He ended up not getting the contract he was looking for. Maybe we could swoop in and snag him for cheap, and he could be our starting point guard. Well, turns out that even for a really cheap Dennis Schroeder, the guy just doesn't want to come to Chicago because, GarPax are running things and players know not to come to Chicago because of that. Not only that, but the front office, because they weren't tracking their salary cap and how much money they were throwing out in contracts, they then realized they wouldn't have even been able to afford even a cheap deal for Schroeder anyway. So you know what? They're just going to sit back with their guy, Coby White, the guy they drafted with the number 7 pick. He's going to be the starting point guard. He is the point guard for the future. They've got their guy in Lauri Markkanen under contract for 4 years. They'll figure out what to do with the Zach Lavine situation next offseason. They're not going to worry about that right now. But of course, he'll want to stay after all of these stellar moves that were made this offseason, right? They've got their shooter in Doug McDermott. They locked up Nerlens Noel. We've got Denzel Valentine coming back, another spark off the bench. And then GarPax realized they have just enough cap space for a vet minimum deal, which they then used to re-sign Felicio because they couldn't get anybody else. So why not keep their guy, the GOAT Felicio, on a minimum deal, because that's really a steal if you can get Felicio on a minimum contract. So there you have it. That's the Bulls team. That's how the offseason would have looked or would have gone down if GarPax were still running the show. Thank God they are not, because we all know it would have been a disaster. And I think as Bulls fans, we just need to be so thankful that after all these years, we finally have some executives that are actually competent in their job. I want to know what you guys think, though. How do you think the offseason would have gone down with GarPax still at the helm? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.